You thought you could break me. Emily Carter whispered to the empty hallway, her voice barely carrying over the soft hum of the chandeliers above, the polished marble floor reflecting every hesitant step she took as she adjusted the strap of her navy maternity dress, the fabric a shield against the storm she knew was coming. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the faint aroma of polished wood and the subtle tang of citrus from the carefully arranged fruit platters, a stark contrast to the tension coiling in her chest. Every inhale sharp with anticipation, and every exhale a measured attempt at calm. She glanced out through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the late afternoon sunlight, stretching long shadows across the manicured lawn below, each golden beam catching the faint shimmer of her bracelet, a gift from her father that had once felt heavy with expectation, but now served as a talisman of strength. The soft click of her heels against the marble echoing like a heartbeat in the cavernous foyer, each step drawing her closer to the grand room where the evening's gathering would unfold. The air thick with the muted buzz of conversation and laughter that floated from the nearby dining hall, yet none of it touched her as she focused inward, recalling the weeks spent quietly rebuilding her life. Mornings filled with arranging flowers at the boutique. Afternoons devoted to curating the gallery displays that had slowly earned her a reputation. Every small victory etched into her resolve, a silent declaration that the past no longer defined her. And as the doors opened to reveal the first glimmer of the room's glittering interior, the soft glow of crystal chandeliers casting a warm light over polished oak tables, Emily's hand instinctively rested on her belly, a grounding gesture as much for herself as for the life within her, the dress's fabric hugging gently without constriction, its deep hue mirroring the strength she was learning to own. And when she spotted familiar faces from the city's social circles, a gentle flinch reminded her of old insecurities. Yet she squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and allowed the calm clarity she had cultivated to guide her steps, moving with quiet confidence toward the center of the space, where the polished parquet gleamed underfoot, the soft murmur of conversation pausing just slightly as her presence made its subtle mark, each measured step a rhythm of reclamation. A silent announcement that Emily Carter had returned not as a shadow of who she once was, but as a woman who carried dignity, purpose, and the unspoken promise of an unfolding story that none of the attendees would be able to predict, the tension in her chest shifting from anxiety to a poised readiness, every sense alert to the room's energy, yet anchored in the quiet power she now possessed. As she paused near the center, hand lightly resting on the curve of her belly, eyes sweeping over the gathering with a composed serenity, the whisper of her voice almost lost in the ambient clatter as she muttered, "I am still here, and I will not be overlooked." A mantra that carried her through each greeting, each polite nod and smile exchanged, weaving a thread of calm authority through the air, setting the stage for the evening's unfolding, where the contrast between past vulnerabilities and present strength would slowly, deliberately, reveal itself to every observer, leaving a charged anticipation that promised the storm to come. Emily Carter moved through the grand ballroom with deliberate composure, each step measured against the soft murmur of conversations that rose and fell like a tide, her eyes scanning familiar faces with a quiet calculation, noting who lingered too long in polite greetings and who allowed themselves to drift past without notice, all while the ambient glow of crystal chandeliers reflected in her sapphire eyes, and the subtle scent of jasmine from her clutch perfume clung to her skin, a delicate armor against the anticipation coiling in her chest. She recalled the early mornings spent arranging the gallery displays with meticulous care, each photograph, painting, and sculpture placed to tell a story of resilience and renewed purpose, a story she had built with her own hands after years of compromise and quiet submission. And as she exchanged courteous nods with the city's social elite, a sharp memory flared of nights when laughter had felt forced and smiles hollow, reminding her of the strength required to inhabit her own skin now. Every gesture a testament to regained dignity, the soft clink of her heels against polished marble marking the rhythm of self-possession, a beat she carried through the room like a pulse, unwavering and steady, the warm light casting subtle shadows that enhanced the elegance of her navy dress, the fabric flowing gracefully without hindrance, its deep hue a reflection of inner fortitude and calm authority. And as she approached the center of the gathering, she caught sight of James Carter across the room, his posture rigid and expression unreadable, yet the air between them crackled with the tension of shared history, a silent acknowledgement of past transgressions without need for words. Emily drew a slow, steadying breath, feeling the life growing within her respond with a fluttering reassurance, a quiet heartbeat aligning with her own as if in silent support of the moment to come. And in that pause, she allowed herself a fleeting glance toward the intricately set banquet tables, the polished silver and crystal sparkling like a promise of order and refinement in contrast to the emotional turbulence she carried, while she navigated the subtle currents of attention around her, noting how whispers momentarily paused and eyes subtly shifted as she passed, a gentle affirmation. That presence alone could command notice without intrusion or spectacle, and she let the calm strength she had cultivated over months of patient rebuilding radiate outward, each measured step a testament to survival and poise. As she positioned herself with understated confidence near the center of the room, hand lightly resting on her belly in a protective gesture, eyes sweeping over the crowd with a serene yet focused gaze, sensing the weight of anticipation in the air as though the room itself held its breath. And in that measured silence, the subtle echo of a voice in her memory reminded her of the quiet power of patience and preparation, a force that needed no proclamation but carried with it the inevitability of change, the promise that the evening would unfold according to the unspoken terms she had set for herself. And as the soft laughter and clinking of glasses continued around her, Emily felt the last traces of apprehension give way to a steady, commanding calm, her presence a gentle but unmistakable assertion that the past could no longer dictate the terms of her life, leaving the air charged with the poised expectation of what was yet to come. The grand ballroom held its breath as Emily Carter felt the subtle shift in the air, a quiet tension threading through the crystal chandeliers and the polished parquet underfoot, every guest sensing the approaching moment without knowing its source. From her vantage near the center, she could see James Carter across the room, his confident facade faltering slightly as the weight of past actions pressed silently upon him. The meticulous arrangement of tables, floral centerpieces, and gleaming silverware forming a calm, orderly stage that contrasted sharply with the swirling emotions in her chest, the gentle curve of her maternity dress flowing around her with every poised step, as if the fabric itself were affirming her control and composure. And the warm amber light played over the soft waves of her hair, catching hints of gold that mirrored the quiet strength she carried, while the soft hum of conversation ebbed and flowed like distant waves, leaving a subtle echo of anticipation that seemed to pulse through the room with her heartbeat, each careful interaction with acquaintances reinforcing her presence and silent authority, her hand resting lightly against the life she nurtured within her, a tangible anchor of purpose and calm. As the collective gaze of the guests began to gravitate subtly toward the subtle drama unfolding, their whispers tapering into attentive silence without ever breaking decorum. And just as a subtle shift of tension brushed the edges of her awareness, the tall doors at the far end of the room opened with deliberate gravity, drawing every eye as a figure entered with an air of composed command. Richard Dalton, her father, moving with measured precision, tailored suit impeccable, and eyes scanning the room with a calm intensity, the quiet certainty in his stride radiating authority that immediately realigned the energy of the space, the room's atmosphere thickening with the promise of a confrontation that needed no words to signal its importance. And as he approached, Emily felt a gentle, steadying reassurance, her pulse aligning with the rhythm of his measured steps, the subtle exchange of glances between them conveying an unspoken strategy, a poised readiness to reclaim what had been challenged, the soft glimmer of the chandeliers reflecting in his eyes like a silent herald of justice. And as the distance closed, James's expression betrayed a flicker of unease, the subtle tremor of realization that the balance of power had shifted, while Emily maintained an unshakable calm, her body language exuding a controlled elegance, a quiet declaration that she would no longer be defined by fear or by the shadows of past transgressions. And the guests, sensing the charge in the atmosphere, leaned forward in silent anticipation, watching as the interplay of dignity, authority, and quiet determination wove a narrative more potent than any words could convey. Every measured gesture and careful step crafting a tableau of resilience and imminent resolution, leaving the air thick with the unspoken understanding that the evening's outcome, though not yet revealed, would mark a turning point both for Emily and for all who bore witness. The poised serenity she maintained hinting at the profound transformations that lay just beyond the next breath, as if the room itself acknowledged the power of quiet strength and the inevitability of justice poised to unfold. The soft murmur of conversations resumed a tentative rhythm, but Emily Carter remained a calm presence, her gaze sweeping across the room with quiet authority, noting subtle shifts in posture and expression as if reading an intricate map of social currents. The warm amber glow of the chandeliers highlighting the gentle curve of her maternity dress and the deliberate grace of her movements as she navigated toward a cluster of familiar acquaintances, her hand lightly resting on her belly in a protective, grounding gesture, the faint fragrance of jasmine lingering in the air like a gentle reminder of personal fortitude, and with each measured step, the polished parquet seemed to echo the rhythm of her regained confidence, a silent but unmistakable declaration that she was fully present and in command of the space. As she reached the center of the room, her eyes caught a fleeting movement near the grand staircase. James Carter standing with a stiffened posture, the weight of his own awareness pressing into his expression as if he could sense the shift in energy, and Emily allowed herself a subtle, composed smile, a quiet acknowledgement of the endurance and patience that had brought her to this moment, the soft hum of the guests fading into the background as the anticipation coiled like a living thing in the air around them, every subtle gesture and deliberate glance building the tension of what was yet to unfold, the room itself seeming to hold its breath in reverence for the poised determination she carried, while her father, Richard Dalton, moved with measured precision, every step echoing quietly across the polished floor as he approached, a composed presence that radiated authority and calm, his eyes scanning the room with a serene intensity, the subtle interplay of light across his tailored suit catching hints of gold in the fabric, a visual counterpart to the quiet power he wielded. Emily felt the gentle alignment of their energies, the unspoken communication flowing in measured rhythm, the room vibrating with the anticipation of silent confrontation without a word being spoken, each guest sensing the gravity of the moment in a charged yet refined awareness. And as Richard reached her side, their shared glance conveyed a strategy built on patience, resilience, and quiet strength, the narrative of years past condensed into a poised readiness to reclaim dignity and assert presence, the gentle curve of her dress, the soft shimmer of her bracelet, the measured cadence of her steps all contributing to a tableau of refined power, a demonstration that strength could be expressed with elegance rather than noise. And as she moved with subtle, deliberate grace to the nearest cluster of observers, exchanging polite but firm acknowledgments, the atmosphere thickened. With expectation, the anticipation of transformation settling over every polished surface, every softly flickering candle, as if the room itself had become a stage for the unfolding of justice, resilience, and the unassailable power of calm, deliberate authority, leaving the guests suspended in a moment that promised revelation, poised to witness the full measure of Emily Carter's quiet reclamation of presence and the inevitable consequences it would bring. The room seemed to hold its breath as Emily Carter and Richard Dalton moved through the gathering with composed precision, the soft hum of conversations dipping into a near silence around them, the polished marble and gleaming crystal reflecting the warm glow of chandeliers, as if capturing the intensity of the moment in every facet. Emily's hand resting lightly against her belly in a gesture that was both protective and grounding, a silent signal of her presence and poise, while Richard's measured steps conveyed authority and unspoken command, every guest sensing the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the air thick with anticipation yet restrained by decorum, as eyes instinctively followed the pair, whispers fading into attentive stillness without a word being spoken, the subtle elegance of Emily's navy dress catching the light and accentuating her calm confidence, a visual testament to the inner strength she carried after months of patient preparation and quiet resilience. Each step she took an assertion of control over the space that once held shadows of past uncertainty, and as they approached the center of the ballroom, James Carter's posture tightened, his previously assured composure faltering under the quiet but unmistakable pressure emanating from father and daughter, while the guests absorbed the tension, sensing the gravity of what was to unfold, the intricate arrangement of tables, flowers, and silverware providing a serene, ordered contrast to the charged emotions threading through the room. Emily's gaze swept across the assembly with calm, deliberate awareness, noting every subtle glance and shifting stance as if reading the collective anticipation, while Richard positioned himself with unshakable presence beside her, a subtle alignment of energies conveying strategy and readiness without a word, the lighting glimmering off the crystal, the soft scent of fresh jasmine mingling with polished wood and fine linens, all elements composing an almost cinematic tableau in which authority, patience, and quiet resilience were the central narrative, and in that poised stillness, the room seemed to lean forward collectively, the audience awaiting the next unfolding act, aware that the subtle tension, the measured steps, and the silent power wielded by Emily and her father would shape the outcome of the evening, leaving every observer suspended in the charged space between anticipation and revelation, each carefully orchestrated gesture a signal that the story was far from over, and the full measure of dignity, influence, and unspoken justice was about to be revealed with a quiet, commanding inevitability. The soft murmur of the ballroom seemed to fade into a tense, expectant hush as Emily Carter and Richard Dalton approached the center of the room, the warm amber light from the crystal chandeliers glinting off the polished surfaces and casting gentle highlights across the elegant faces gathered, each step deliberate, measured, carrying the weight of months of preparation and quiet resilience. Emily's hand resting lightly against the curve of her belly, a grounding gesture as much for herself as for the life within her, while Richard's presence radiated authority and composure, a calm, commanding force that seemed to subtly shift the atmosphere of the space. Every guest instinctively sensing the shift, their whispered conversations tapering into silence, replaced by a charged awareness that something significant was unfolding. Emily's sapphire eyes scanned the room with careful precision, noting every reaction, every subtle glance and tension in posture, a silent map of social energy that she navigated with poise and quiet confidence, the soft hum of the chandeliers above mingling with the distant strains of a string quartet in the corner, providing a refined backdrop to the building anticipation. And as they reached a vantage point that drew the attention of those nearby, James Carter's face reflected a flicker of uncertainty, his controlled expression slightly faltering under the unspoken gravity of the moment, while Emily allowed herself a subtle, composed smile, the soft curve of her lips communicating assurance and unshakable calm, without a word, a visual declaration that she had reclaimed presence and dignity. And as Richard positioned himself beside her with unerring precision, the alignment of their energies created an almost tangible current through the room, a poised readiness that required no proclamation, only the silent, confident assertion of authority and control, the guests watching intently, the polished marble and crystal surfaces reflecting their collective gaze. Emily's navy dress moving with understated elegance as she shifted slightly, every gesture a careful assertion of control over the space and the narrative unfolding. The gentle fragrance of jasmine she wore mingling with the subtle aroma of polished wood and fine linens, grounding her as she maintained a serene awareness of each detail. And in that poised stillness, the room collectively leaned into the anticipation, the soft clink of silverware and distant echoes of polite laughter fading into the background as all attention centered on the poised figures at the heart of the ballroom, the charged air vibrating with the subtle promise of resolution, quiet power, and the imminent revelation of authority and dignity restored, leaving every observer suspended in a delicate tension between expectation and the unfolding of a poised, commanding justice that would soon become unmistakably clear. Emily Carter felt a subtle shift ripple through the room as the guests' collective attention seemed to focus entirely on her and Richard Dalton, the soft glow of chandeliers above casting long, elegant reflections across the polished marble floor, Each subtle movement she made carrying a deliberate weight of poise and controlled authority, her hand resting lightly on the curve of her belly in a grounding, protective gesture. The delicate shimmer of her navy dress catching the light and accentuating the calm confidence radiating from her, while Richard's presence beside her exuded an unwavering, composed strength, his tailored suit impeccably cut, each step deliberate, the quiet power of his demeanor commanding attention without a word, as whispers and polite murmurs faded into silence around them. Emily's sapphire eyes swept the room with careful precision, noting every subtle glance, every shift in posture, as though reading an intricate map of anticipation and expectation, the soft murmur of the string quartet in the corner providing a restrained soundtrack to the electric tension. And as they reached a vantage point that drew the gaze of all present, James Carter's expression betrayed a fleeting moment of uncertainty. The practiced composure he once carried now subtly strained under the weight of awareness, while Emily allowed a controlled, measured smile to play at the corners of her lips, a quiet signal of confidence and unshakable calm that contrasted sharply with the taut tension in the air around him. The room itself seeming to hold its breath, every polished surface, crystal, and silver catching the light as though reflecting the poised narrative unfolding. And as Richard positioned himself beside her with quiet precision, their energies aligned. In an unspoken strategy, a shared, silent readiness that required no announcement, only the presence of calm, deliberate authority, each movement and glance carefully calculated to command respect and subtly assert control over the space, while the guests, sensing the gravity of the moment, watched intently, their own anticipation heightening as the soft hum of conversation and distant laughter faded further into reverence. Emily's posture unwavering, the subtle sway of her dress and the gentle alignment of her body projecting a silent strength, a quiet command of dignity that made her presence impossible to ignore, the ambient sense of jasmine, polished wood, and refined linens mingling in the air to create a sensory backdrop that reinforced the serenity and power she radiated. And in that poised, measured stillness, the room became a tableau of anticipation and expectation. Every observer suspended between curiosity and awe, sensing that the next movements would carry the culmination of patience, resilience, and quiet authority, the unspoken promise of resolution hovering like a tangible current, leaving the assembled company aware that Emily Carter's reclaiming of presence, dignity, and quiet influence was not merely an event to witness, but a profound demonstration of subtle, commanding power set to unfold with deliberate, undeniable clarity. Emily Carter felt the subtle hum of anticipation tighten around her like a carefully woven tapestry as she continued through the grand ballroom, her sapphire eyes sweeping every corner with quiet command, the soft glint of crystal from the chandeliers reflecting in the polished marble floors and accentuating the graceful sway of her navy dress. Each step deliberate, measured, and poised, her hand resting lightly against the curve of her belly as both anchor and statement of presence, while Richard Dalton remained a steady pillar beside her, his composure and quiet authority radiating a controlled energy that seemed to bend the room's attention toward their movement. The murmurs and polite laughter of the assembled guests, softening into an almost reverent silence as they instinctively sensed the significance of the moment, the ambient fragrance of jasmine blending with polished wood and fine linens to create an invisible, yet palpable framework of calm influence around them. And Emily allowed herself to take a slow, steadying breath, feeling the steady rhythm of the life she carried respond like a quiet heartbeat of reassurance, while across the room, James Carter's posture stiffened imperceptibly, a fleeting uncertainty flickering in his expression as the composed presence of father and daughter aligned with subtle inevitability. And as they approached a central vantage point, Emily's gaze held every detail, every flicker of emotion in the eyes of those around her, noting the unspoken acknowledgement of authority and the suspended anticipation that hung in the air, her subtle smile conveying patience, determination, and the unassailable calm that only comes from months of preparation and quiet resilience, while the soft hum of the string quartet in the corner provided a refined auditory backdrop. accentuating the tension and heightening the perceptible energy of poised expectation. Each subtle gesture of Emily and Richard carrying a silent weight of strategy, the measured cadence of their movements establishing dominance and setting the tone for the unfolding narrative without a single word spoken. And as they settled near the center of the space, the polished floors, crystal reflections, and soft glow of the ambient lighting seemed to frame them in a living tableau of controlled authority, the guests leaning in subtly as if drawn by the magnetic pull of quiet confidence. The room itself seeming to breathe with the rhythm of anticipation, every carefully orchestrated movement reinforcing the unspoken promise that the evening's events were about to shift irrevocably. And in that poised, almost suspended moment, Emily Carter embodied a seamless balance of dignity, calm, and subtle power, each detail from the gentle sway of her dress to the serene alignment of her posture and the quiet communication with Richard Dalton reinforcing the narrative of quiet reclamation, strength, and the inevitable unfolding of presence and authority, leaving every observer in the room caught between admiration and awe, fully aware that what was about to occur would mark a turning point in the story of past transgressions, resilience, and the unspoken assertion of a quiet but undeniable power. Emily Carter felt the room tighten around her presence as she subtly shifted her weight, the soft echo of her heels on the polished marble floor blending with the muted hum of the string quartet, each note accentuating the poised tension that wove through the grand ballroom, her sapphire eyes sweeping over the gathered guests with quiet assurance, noting the careful balance of curiosity and subdued admiration in their glances, while her hand rested gently against the curve of her belly, a grounding rhythm in the midst of poised anticipation, the navy fabric of her dress flowing gracefully with each measured step, catching the warm glow of the crystal chandeliers above, as if reflecting the deliberate calm she carried, and Richard Dalton's composed presence beside her projected a subtle authority that seemed to realign the energy of the room, every movement precise, intentional, and commanding without a word, as the ambient scent of jasmine mingled with polished wood and fine linens, reinforcing the serene gravity of the moment, the murmurs and soft laughter of previous conversation fading into an attentive silence. Emily noting the subtle reactions, the careful shifts in posture, the eyes darting toward the center of attention, all of which she catalogued with the calm discernment of someone fully in command of her surroundings, while James Carter's posture betrayed the slightest tremor of uncertainty, a fleeting shadow passing across his features as he registered the subtle but undeniable shift in the dynamic, the quiet confidence radiating from Emily and Richard creating a gravitational pull that held the gaze of every observer. And as she took a deliberate step forward, aligning herself perfectly beside her father, the interplay of their energies conveyed a silent strategy, a poised readiness that required no words, each gesture a testament to preparation, patience, and the reclamation of presence, the soft shimmer of her bracelet and the understated elegance of her dress punctuating the visual narrative of composed authority, while the guests, sensing the weight and significance of the moment, leaned imperceptibly forward, their anticipation palpable but restrained, the room itself seeming to hold its breath in recognition of the poised narrative unfolding. And in that charged quiet, Emily allowed herself a subtle, controlled smile, the curve of her lips communicating assurance, quiet power, and the unshakable calm that comes from reclaiming agency and dignity. Every detail from the measured sway of her dress to the steady alignment of her posture reinforcing a story of resilience, preparation, and poised authority, leaving the gathered company suspended in the moment between expectation and revelation, fully aware that what was about to transpire would mark a turning point, a quiet but undeniable assertion of presence, influence, and the poised reclamation of the narrative that had long been waiting for its moment to unfold. The soft glow of the chandeliers bathed the grand ballroom in a warm, golden light as Emily Carter advanced with measured elegance, her navy dress flowing gently with each deliberate step, the subtle shimmer of her bracelet catching the reflections from the polished marble floors and crystal accents, while her hand rested lightly on the curve of her belly, a steady anchor that mirrored the calm confidence radiating from her presence, every movement precise, intentional, and imbued with a quiet authority that commanded attention without a word, and Richard Dalton walked beside her with unyielding composure, his eyes scanning the room with a keen awareness, noting every shift in posture, every subtle glance, the ambient hum of polite conversation fading as the guests instinctively sensed the poised tension and quiet significance of the moment. Emily's sapphire eyes met familiar faces with calm assurance, acknowledging their presence with a gentle nod, her posture unwavering, her movements measured, a soft grace that carried the weight of resilience and careful preparation, while the soft scent of jasmine mingled with polished wood and fine linens, reinforcing the subtle authority she exuded. And as they reached the center of the room, James Carter's expression reflected a fleeting uncertainty, his previous composure now slightly strained under the quiet, commanding energy projected by father and daughter. Emily allowed a controlled, deliberate smile to curve her lips, a visual declaration of patience, calm, and measured strength, the room itself seeming to lean subtly into the poised narrative unfolding, the ambient lighting and crystal reflections framing them like a living tableau of dignity and quiet power, every gesture, subtle glance, and poised step reinforcing the unspoken strategy and the reclaimed presence she carried, the guests drawn into the charged stillness, their own anticipation heightening as they observed the delicate interplay of composure, authority, and quiet influence. And as Emily shifted slightly, aligning herself perfectly beside Richard, the room seemed to breathe in unison, a gentle, collective acknowledgement of the poised assertion of power and dignity that required no words, only the carefully cultivated presence and readiness that radiated from them, the soft echo of heels on marble, the subdued rustle of silk, and the gentle hum of conversation forming a refined, almost cinematic backdrop for the quiet assertion of authority, while Emily's gaze swept the room with precise awareness, noting every reaction and unspoken acknowledgement of her presence, the subtle alignment of her posture, and the serene confidence she projected, leaving every observer aware that the next moments would define the unfolding narrative of resilience, reclaimed dignity, and poised influence, the charged air around them thick with anticipation, suspended in the delicate balance between expectation and revelation, a tableau of calm authority poised to shift the story with quiet, undeniable clarity. Emily Carter paused near the center of the grand ballroom, the soft glimmer of the crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over her navy dress, the fabric flowing with understated elegance, as if echoing the calm authority she carried, her hand lightly resting against the curve of her belly, a subtle anchor of presence and reassurance, while Richard Dalton stood beside her with quiet composure, his tailored suit impeccable and his gaze sweeping the room with measured awareness, noting every shift in posture, every subtle glance from the guests, the soft hum of conversation fading as the attentive silence of anticipation filled the space, the polished marble reflecting hints of golden light that caught in the delicate shimmer of Emily's bracelet and the subtle highlights in her hair, and as the distance between her and James Carter narrowed in the periphery, his confident composure faltering ever so slightly under the quiet, commanding presence of father and daughter, Emily allowed a subtle, controlled smile to grace her lips, a visual assertion of calm strength and unwavering dignity, the room itself seeming to pulse with the poised tension, every soft whisper and shifting gaze reinforcing the sense of poised authority that radiated from her, the faint scent of jasmine, mingling with the refined aroma of polished wood and fine linens, forming an invisible framework of reassurance and control. And as she adjusted her stance, the subtle sway of her dress moving in harmony with the measured cadence of her steps, the guest's attention naturally gravitated toward the interplay of her quiet composure and Richard's authoritative presence, every movement deliberate and infused with quiet intent, the soft clink of crystal and silver in the background punctuating the charged stillness, Emily's sapphire eyes scanning the room with precision, noting reactions, gauging unspoken acknowledgement, the gentle alignment of her posture and subtle gestures conveying the meticulous patience and resilience that had brought her to this defining moment. And as the subtle rhythm of anticipation grew heavier, she felt the weight of months of preparation crystallize into poised readiness, the room collectively holding its breath in the elegance of the tableau unfolding. Before them, every observer suspended between expectation and the impending resolution. The soft glow of the chandeliers, the polished floor, and the ambient sounds blending to create a cinematic atmosphere, each detail reinforcing the story of quiet reclamation, dignity, and unassailable authority, leaving no doubt that the narrative of past challenges, carefully navigated power, and reclaimed presence was reaching its moment of undeniable clarity, a poised and commanding assertion that would leave the assembled guests quietly recognizing the depth of Emily Carter's enduring strength and the deliberate, measured influence she now wielded. Emily Carter allowed herself a slow, steadying breath as the charged stillness of the grand ballroom deepened around her, the warm glow of the chandeliers catching the subtle shimmer of her navy dress and reflecting softly across the polished marble floors. Each measured step she took carrying the quiet authority and grace she had cultivated over months of deliberate preparation, her hand resting lightly against the gentle curve of her belly, a grounding presence that reinforced the calm confidence radiating from her posture, while Richard Dalton remained beside her, a composed, commanding figure whose quiet assurance seemed to ripple through the room, every observer subtly adjusting to the weight of his presence, the murmurs of polite conversation fading into an attentive silence that amplified the poised tension in the air. Emily's sapphire eyes scanned the guests with careful precision, noting the subtlest shifts in posture and expression, every glance, every slight movement, catalogued with a calm awareness that reinforced her quiet command, the ambient scent of jasmine mingling with the refined aroma of polished wood and fine linens, creating an invisible layer of sensory focus that supported her unspoken authority. And as she allowed her gaze to rest briefly on James Carter, his composure now visibly strained, a flicker of uncertainty passing across his features, she felt the culmination of months of patience, strategy, and silent resilience crystallize into poised readiness, the soft hum of the string quartet. In the corner punctuating the charged quiet of the room as if marking each beat of the unfolding drama, the polished surfaces of tables, crystal, and silver reflecting the poised tableau before them, every detail contributing to the narrative of dignity reclaimed and influence asserted, while subtle shifts of energy from Richard Dalton aligned with her own deliberate movements, a silent coordination that conveyed authority without a single word, and the guests, sensing the nuanced interplay of calm power and measured presence, leaned forward imperceptibly, their collective anticipation tangible yet restrained, the soft clinking of glasses and subdued murmur of distant conversation fading into the background as all attention centered on the poised figures at the heart of the ballroom, Emily's slight, controlled smile conveying confidence and unshakable composure, a quiet declaration of self-possession and the enduring strength she carried, every gesture, subtle sway of her dress, and careful alignment of posture reinforcing the narrative of resilience, preparation, and quiet command, the room itself seeming to pulse in synchrony with her deliberate, measured presence, leaving every observer suspended in the tension between expectation and resolution, acutely aware that the unfolding moments would redefine the atmosphere, assert authority, and reveal the deliberate, poised reclamation of dignity that Emily Carter had meticulously crafted and now quietly, undeniably wielded. Emily Carter stood at the center of the grand ballroom, the soft glow of chandeliers casting a golden light across the polished marble floors, every crystal reflecting subtle fragments of warmth and calm, her navy dress flowing elegantly around her, hand lightly resting on the gentle curve of her belly as a quiet anchor of presence, while Richard Dalton stood poised beside her, his tailored suit impeccably cut, eyes scanning the room with a serene awareness that conveyed authority without a word, the ambient hum of the string quartet in the corner fading into a background of attentive silence as every guest instinctively sensed the gravity of the moment, the subtle fragrance of jasmine mingling with polished wood and fine linens, creating an invisible framework of composure and refined focus. Emily's sapphire eyes met those of familiar faces with controlled assurance, her slight, deliberate smile conveying calm strength and poised confidence. And as James Carter's expression revealed a flicker of uncertainty, The quiet authority of father and daughter radiated a tension that held the room in rapt attention, every gesture, measured step, and subtle sway of fabric contributing to the narrative of patience, resilience, and quiet reclamation. The polished surfaces, sparkling crystals, and soft lighting framing the scene like a cinematic tableau. The guests drawn into the poised drama of unspoken influence and impending resolution. The soft echo of heels on marble, the faint rustle of fabric, and the subdued hum of distant conversation forming a refined rhythm that highlighted the poised power before them. And as Emily allowed herself a slow, steadying breath, she felt the culmination of months of preparation and careful planning coalesce into a quiet, commanding presence, her posture and subtle movements exuding authority and dignity that required no declaration, while Richard's calm alignment beside her reinforced the measured command of space and narrative, the room itself seeming to lean in, attentive and suspended, every observer acutely aware that the unfolding tableau represented more than elegance. It was a deliberate assertion of regained strength, poised influence, and unshakable composure, a quiet but undeniable declaration that the story had shifted irrevocably. Emily's serene gaze sweeping the assembly as she acknowledged their attention with measured grace, the soft shimmer of her bracelet catching the chandelier light and punctuating her calm authority, the ambient energy of the space holding in delicate suspension every eye, every subtle movement of posture and glance, reflecting the recognition of the poised reclamation of presence, the room breathing with the rhythm of anticipation as Emily Carter, anchored in quiet confidence and refined elegance, stood as the embodiment of patient strategy, resilience, and understated power, leaving every guest silently acknowledging the deliberate, poised culmination of a narrative meticulously built and now unfolding with unspoken clarity. A final tableau of calm dominance, influence, and dignity that resonated through the space, the ambient light, polished surfaces, and serene authority combining to leave the moment suspended in quiet awe and poised anticipation.